and had a whip put into his hands by Jupiter. And immediately upon sight of Augustus, who had been sent for by his uncle Caesar to the sacrifice, and was as yet perfectly unknown to most of the company, he affirmed that it was the very boy he had seen in his dream. When he assumed the manly toga, his senatorian tunic becoming loose in the seam on each side fell at his feet. Some would have this to forebode that the order of which that was the badge of distinction would some time or other be subject to him. Julius Caesar, in cutting down a wood to make room for his camp near Munda, happened to light upon a palm tree, and ordered it to be preserved as an omen of victory. From the root of this tree there put out immediately a sucker, which, in a few days, grew to such a height as not only to equal but to overshadow it, and afford room for many nests of wild pigeons which built in it, though that species of bird particularly avoids a hard and rough leaf. It is likewise reported that Caesar was chiefly influenced by this prodigy to prefer his sister's grandson before all others for his successor. In his retirement at Apollonia, he went with his friend Agrippa to visit Theogenes, the astrologer, in his gallery on the roof. Agrippa, who first consulted the fates, having great and almost incredible fortunes predicted of him, Augustus did not choose to make known his nativity, and persisted for some time in the refusal, from a mixture of shame and fear, lest his fortunes should be predicted as inferior to those of Agrippa. Being persuaded, however, after much importunity, to declare it, Theogenes started up from his seat and paid him adoration. Not long afterwards Augustus was so confident on the greatness of his destiny that he published his horoscope and struck a silver coin, bearing upon it the sign of Capricorn, under the influence of which he was born. After the death of Caesar, upon his return from Apollonia, as he was entering the city, on a sudden, in a clear and bright sky, a circle resembling the rainbow surrounded the body of the sun, and immediately afterwards the tomb of Julia, Caesar's daughter, was struck by lightning. In his first consulship, whilst he was observing the auguries, 12 vultures presented themselves, as they had done to Romulus. And when he offered sacrifice, the livers of all the victims were folded inward in the lower part, a circumstance which was regarded by those present, who had skill in things of that nature, as an indubitable prognostic of great and wonderful fortune. He certainly had a presentiment of the issue of all his wars. When the troops of the triumvirate were collected about Bologna, an eagle, which sat upon his tent and was attacked by 2 crows, beat them both, and struck them to the ground in the view of the whole army, who thence inferred that discord would arise between the 3 colleagues, which would be attended with the like event, and it accordingly happened. At Philippi he was assured of success by a Thessalian, upon the authority, as he pretended, of the divine Caesar himself, who had appeared to him while he was travelling in a by-road. At Perugia, the sacrifice not presenting any favourable intimations, but the contrary, he ordered fresh victims. The enemy, however, carrying off the sacred things in a sudden sally, it was agreed amongst the augurs that all the dangers and misfortunes which had threatened the sacrificer would fall upon the heads of those who had got possession of the entrails. And accordingly so it happened. The day before the sea fight near Sicily, as he was walking upon the shore, a fish leaped out of the sea and laid itself at his feet. At Actium, while he was going down to his fleet to engage the enemy, he was met by an ass with a fellow driving it. The name of the man was Eutychus, and that of the animal Nikon. After the victory he erected a brazen statue to each, in a temple built upon the spot where he had encamped. His death, of which I shall now speak, and his subsequent deification, were intimated by divers manifest prodigies. As he was finishing the census amidst a great crowd of people in the Campus Martius, an eagle hovered round him several times, and then directed its course to a neighbouring temple, where it settled upon the name of Agrippa, and at the first letter. Upon observing this, he ordered his colleague Tiberius to put up the vows, which it is usual to make on such occasions, for the succeeding lustrum. For he declared he would not meddle with what it was probable he should never accomplish, though the tables were ready drawn for it. About the same time the first letter of his name in an inscription upon one of his statues was struck out by lightning, which was interpreted as a presage that he would live only 100 days longer, the letter C denoting that number, and that he would be placed amongst the gods, as Caesar, which is the remaining part of the word Caesar, signifies in the Tuscan language a god. Being, therefore, about dispatching Tiberius to Illyricum, and designing to go with him as far as Beneventum, but being detained by several persons who applied to him respecting causes they had depending, he cried out, and it was afterwards regarded as an omen of his death, "Not all the business in the world shall detain me at home 1 moment longer." And setting out upon his journey, he went as far as Astura, whence, contrary to his custom, he put to sea in the night time, as there was a favourable wind. His malady proceeded from diarrhoea, notwithstanding which he went round the coast of Campania, in the adjacent islands, and spent 4 days in that of Caprae, where he gave himself up entirely to repose and relaxation. Happening to sail by the bay of Puteoli, the passengers and mariners aboard a ship of Alexandria just then arrived, clad all in white, with chaplets upon their heads and offering incense, loaded him with praises and joyful acclamations, crying out, "By you we live, by you we sail securely, by you enjoy our liberty and our fortunes." At which, being greatly pleased, he distributed to each of those who attended him 40 gold pieces, requiring from them an assurance on oath not to employ the sum given them in any other way than the purchase of Alexandrian merchandise. And during several days afterwards he distributed togae and pallia, among other gifts, on condition that the Romans should use the Greek, and the Greeks the Roman dress and language. He likewise constantly attended to see the boys perform their exercises, according to an ancient custom still continued at Caprae. He gave them likewise an entertainment in his presence, and not only permitted, but required from them the utmost freedom in jesting, and scrambling for fruit, victuals, and other things which he threw amongst them. In a word, he indulged himself in all the ways of amusement he could contrive. He called an island near Caprae Apregopolis, the city of the Dolittles, from the indolent life which several of his party led there. A favourite of his, one Masgabas, he used to call Ctistes, as if he had been the planter of the island. And observing from his room a great company of people with torches assembled at the tomb of this Masgabas, who died the year before, he uttered very distinctly this verse, which he made extempore: Ctistu de tumbo eisoro pirumenon. Blazing with lights I see the founder's tomb. Then, turning to Thrasyllus, a companion of Tiberius, who reclined on the other side of the table, he asked him, who knew nothing about the matter, what poet he thought was the author of that verse, and on his hesitating to reply, he added another: Horas feci Masgaban timomenon. Honored with torches Masgabas you see. And put the same question to him concerning that likewise. The latter replying that, whoever might be the author, they were excellent verses, he set up a great laugh, and fell into an extraordinary vein of jesting upon it. Soon afterwards, passing over the Naples, although at that time greatly disordered in his bowels by the frequent returns of his disease, he set out the exhibition of the gymnastic games, which were performed in his honour every 5 years, and proceeded with Tiberius to the place intended. But on his return, his disorder increasing, he stopped at Nola, sent for Tiberius back again, and had a long discourse with him in private, after which he gave no further attention to business of any importance. Upon the day of his death, he now and then inquired if there was any disturbance in the town on his account, and calling for a mirror, he ordered his hair to be combed and his shrunk cheeks to be adjusted. Then, asking his friends who were admitted into the room, "Do you think that I have acted my part on the stage of life well?" he immediately subjoined: Eide pane hei kalos, to paiknio, dote kroton, kai pantes sumeis metacharas to paisati. If all be right, with joy your voices raise, in loud applauses to the actor's praise. After which, having dismissed them all, whilst he was inquiring of some persons who were just arrived from Rome concerning Drusus's daughter, who was in a bad state of health, he expired suddenly amidst the kisses of Livia, and with these words: Livia, live mindful of our union. And now farewell.